Welcome to Payoff Pitch, Action Network's Major League Baseball betting podcast. I'm Mike Calabrese, joined as always by Sean Zerillo. We are going to be back Monday, Tuesday, Fridays for best bets every single week moving forward. We're going to look at the Friday slate today. And one day into the season, Sean, the White Sox are undefeated in first place. It's going to be smooth sailing on the South side all the way to a division title, I'm sure. Cedric Mullins is on pace for, let me do the quick math here, 324 home runs this season. And the Reds bullpen may surrender, 4 or 5 runs a game. It's kind of a tire fire there on the back end for the Reds. What were some of your tongue-in-cheek overreactions from opening day?
I would like to ever win a game in extra innings where I have an underdog. You know, all we want when we bet an underdog is to get it to a coin flip situation. We got there with the Nationals. They ran on Zach Wheeler, which is all I was hoping they would do to try to put themselves in position to win. Got a runner thrown out, but hey, at least they actually attempted to steal a base. 1-2 on ninth inning swings. That was not fun. 1-1 on fifth inning swings. Also not fun. And then 0-1 on extras. So a little bit of negative variance on opening day, but the market generally moved in line with the bets that I placed, last night for today. So happy to see the model in general working. And, you know, my anecdotal takeaway from opening day was, holy shit, the ball is flying. Like, there were a lot of home runs yesterday, and I don't know if they brought the juice balls back, but my initial reaction based on watching the sport every single day for the past 5 years, you know, when something's a little off, my spidey senses tend to tingle. The antennas go up a little bit. And I have to say, yesterday, I was texting some people like, hey, is it me or is the ball flying? So it just felt like the ball was jumping a little bit. And I'm skeptical that they're using the same ball that they were the past couple of years.
Well, let's keep our eye on the ball and go right to your best bets here for the Friday slate. What are you looking at?
Mariners under 7 and also the first 5 under 4 between the Mariners and the A's. I projected these totals at 3.5 and 6.4 respectively. I bet them down to 4 at -125 and then 7 at -110. We have the wind blowing out here, but 51 degrees in Seattle right now. You know, when the wind is blowing out there and the temperatures are cool, it doesn't have that dramatic of an effect. Relatively neutral umpire for this game. I do think the Mariners potentially have a starting pitching edge. It's difficult to project where Jeffrey Springs is right now because he came back from Tommy John last year. The velocity was down a little bit. We don't really have spring training starts where there was StatCast data on him, where we were able to figure out how fast he was throwing or like how his velocity progressed throughout the spring. But his final spring start was really good. He struck out 8. You know, even if the velocity remains down where it was last season, he should still have 2 above average pitches, slider, changeup, both grayed out as above average offerings per Stuff Plus. Projections are pretty wide on him, but mostly everybody has him between 3, 6, and 4. The bat has him at 4.4. It's the one outlier projection that probably takes, you know, the velocity level from last year and says, this is a big dip. This guy's closer to a league average starter. Everybody else has him between, you know, as I said, 3.6 and 4, which is closer to the number 2 starter level territory. So it could be a very effective arm. I still project Luis Castillo as the better pitcher. Castillo between 3.6 and 3.9. So it doesn't have that that downside projection. It's basically all of the floor that Springs has with a little bit of upside baked in as well. But his numbers are still down relative to a couple of years ago. The velocity dipped by half a tick last season. It's down 1.7 miles an hour between 2022 and 21 till now. So Luis Castillo no longer that low end number 1 type of guy. He's definitely more with the high end number 2, still very effective, but you can downgrade him from where you had him mentally a couple of years ago. Now, in terms of the side on this game, I wanted to bet the Mariners right after the game ended last night. I was waiting on the total, wanted to make sure, you know, we didn't go to extras and all the key relievers got used. We didn't. Mason Miller never made it to the game. Andres Munoz did. The only guy who threw enough pitches that he probably won't go today is Jose Leclerc. So with that said, I'm fine with the late inning relievers that are likely coming into this game, provided it's close. But the side jumped from Mariners like -145 all the way up to -160 right after the game ended. I projected it closer to -160, -165 for the first half. Wasn't able to get those bets in. Woke up today, the market started coming against the Mariners again. And we'll talk about a number of systems that favor underdogs second and third days of the season. Like historically, underdogs perform really well. Road underdogs, day 2, day 3 of the season, game 2, game 3 of the season. The A's fit 4 different Action Lab systems today. If you're just betting on systems and betting on the market, it seems like there is big money coming in on them and pushing their line down. But once the line dipped to minus 135 for Seattle, considering I make them minus 160, I had to jump in and add a bet. Still prefer the under if you're just placing one bet on this game. But, where the price moved, I had to jump in on Seattle at minus 135. And I'd expect it to close, closer to minus 145 or minus 150. I think I'll end up with some CLV on that, regardless of how the results play out. But just to reiterate, Mariners under 7 to minus 110, and then the under 4 for the first 5 innings to minus 125.
I'm hoping you don't have to sweat it out with the bullpens the way it went yesterday, with 4 runs total in the 8th, 2 home runs from the Mariners, including the game-winning shot by Polanco. So the ball was flying out of the ballpark late there, but I like the angle of the first 5 as well. Now, you talked about underdogs trying to get even or play better in games 2 and game 3. You like the Rangers potentially to tie up this series with the Red Sox after dropping game 1 on opening day.
Yeah, I'll get to those underdog systems because they actually apply to road dogs as opposed to home dogs. But I do like the Rangers at plus money at home. I made them closer to minus 105, so happy to grab them at plus 105 all the way down at any plus money price, plus 101 or better. Not even money. I would take plus 101 or better. Now, Jack Leiter, who's going to start for them today, not their second best starter. They pushed Jacob deGrom down to 4th in their rotation, just going to try to give him extra rest where they can throughout the season. But Leiter does have number 2 starter upside. Just projections right now view him as a number 4 pitcher. They have him between 4.3, 4.7 for an expected FIP. But this guy has potentially elite stuff throughout his entire arsenal. He has 5 potentially above average pitches by stuff metrics. It's all going to come down to the command for him. He had a 10% walk rate last season. Higher in AAA. It was closer to 11% in AAA. If he can get that walk rate down to 7.5%, that's about 1 fewer walk per start as compared to a 10% walk rate. So if you can shave that walk rate down closer, a little bit better than league average, I think Jack Leiter could be a very effective pitcher as opposed to a very enigmatic pitcher, which is what he is right now. But that said, Tanner Houck is not a guy I'm particularly high on as a starting pitcher. I thought as a reliever, he was pretty elite. As a starter last year, 4.11 expected ERA. It was his first time stretching out 270 innings. He declined a little bit in the second half, adding more onto his arm, maybe after rest, after an offseason, back in prime shape. But his spring was really rough. And, I kind of have injury concerns a little bit about this guy. And his strikeout minus walk rate was just 14%. So it kind of aligns with that league average expected ERA. I don't view him as anything substantial. And I think Leiter has the higher upside going forward of the pair. I rate these bullpens about the same. I rate the lineups about the same. I think they're both the top 2 sleeper contenders, whatever. I think they're the 2 top contenders for the American League pennant this season. I think this is your final 2 teams in the American League when it comes down to it at the end. In terms of today's matchup, obviously I give the Red Sox a slight pitching edge, but Texas being at home is enough to get them to minus 105 for me. So plus 101 or better on Texas in what I think is a preview of the eventual ALCS.
March is the best month of the year, not just for sports, but also for getting the best deal on Action Pro. Right now, you can get Action Pro for just over $5 a month for the entire year. And since it's March, that means with the NCAA tournament still going, we have 11 games left. You're going to be able to get Sean Kerner's bracket simulations, Nick Giffin's player props, Stuckey's picks 30 minutes before they go out to everybody else, and more. Plus, since it's an entire year of Action Pro, you'll be covered for the fall with college football, the NFL, all of Major League Baseball. We have you covered end to end here. So go to actionnetwork.com/March to get on board now. All right, let's hop into some other bets that you like. Maybe not the best bets, but the best of the rest here. The Mets, and for a fan base that doesn't like to overreact, game 1, Soto has an opportunity to play hero right off the bat. It doesn't work out. I'm sure that emotionally they would like to be able to bounce back in this spot. Do you think they are positioned to do so? And where do you lean on the total in game 2 here for the Mets?
Yeah, the Mets money line is already out of range. Unfortunately, I betted it plus 125. Yeah, that's a good number. It's all the way down to plus 110 today. So again, the model's working. I'm getting CLV. The market's generally pushing my direction, or I'm waiting for best numbers and firing when it dips, and then it's going back up in my direction. So I'm generally happy with the market movement I've seen so far. I made the Mets plus 108. That's basically where they moved to from plus 125 last night. So good stuff there. The total I made here about 7.5. I'm fine with the under at 8 down to minus 105. That's about where the market has gone to. I actually see some minus 110s in some places. So you'll have to jump on that the moment this podcast releases. It did move down. I would expect the dome to be closed again today. There's rain in the forecast. I think that was part of it. Rob Brake, also a neutral umpire. He does have a very good record to the under. If you look at Bet Labs, 54.5% to the under, 5.7% ROI. I grade him out as a neutral umpire. He actually doesn't have any influence on my projected total, even though, the good historical data in Bet Labs. So just something worth considering. Just because umpires have good historical records to the over or under does not necessarily mean that they're good over or under umpires. We look more so at strikeout rates, walk rates, things like that to find the influence those guys have, as opposed to just how many runs are scored in those contests. Now, in terms of the side, why I bet this, and then we'll get to the under as well. The Astros have two very good relievers, and then I really do not trust the rest of their bullpen. I mentioned this the other day on the podcast, but the Mets, I projected 11th for bullpen value ranking coming into the year. Astros, I had 23rd. And that's with Josh Hader and Brian Abreu at the top of the bullpen. Well, those guys threw 35 and 25 pitches yesterday. You're not going to see Hader today. He almost blew the game, almost blew the under. It was an absolute mess. He was not getting any swinging strikes. Devin Williams for the Yankees as well. Like no swinging strikes, awful inning. So the Mets have a pretty big bullpen edge here. I also talked about the fact that the Mets' advanced scouting is phenomenal, and they seemingly have one or two relievers in every opposing bullpen who they are ready to pounce on. So I would imagine the Astros are going to put out somebody today that the Mets have circled that they're ready to destroy. And when it comes to the later innings, I give them a bullpen advantage on a normal day over Houston. With Hader not available and Abreu less likely to pitch than he normally would be, I think the bullpen edge is very substantial for the Mets today. So even though Hunter Brown is the better pitcher than Tyler McGill, the Mets have a big late inning pitching advantage. Now, I like the under because Brown is one of my favorite pitchers in baseball. I bet him for American League Cy Young. This guy had a really brutal April last year, drawn a lot of comparisons to Justin Verlander, throughout his time as a prospect. And then we saw it over the final 5 months of the season. He added a sinker to his mix. After May, Brown had a 2.5 ERA over his remaining 147 innings. He had the third most wins above replacement in the American League over that span. A very low hard hit rate. The strikeout minus walk rates for McGill and Brown, very similar. McGill's around 15%, Brown was around 17%, but the hard hit rate is the big difference between the two. McGill is north of 40%, Brown is close to 30%. He suppresses hard hits at one of the highest rates in baseball, kind of like a right-handed Max Fried. It's not the same pitch type and all that. I'm just saying in terms of the strikeout minus walk rate and the hard hit rate aligning, where it's the strikeout minus walk rate's good, but it's not near 25%. It's not near the ace level guys, but the hard hit suppression combined with the above average strikeout minus walk rate makes him an elite pitcher. So I think Brown is going to suppress scoring. Tyler McGill is kind of the forgotten man for the Mets. Anytime the Mets have an injured pitcher, Sean Manaea went on the IL in the preseason. They had another pitcher go down in the preseason. I'm seeing projected starting pitchers for the Mets and multiple people. I don't know why. I guess roster resource didn't have him on there. Multiple people put out the Mets updated rotation and just forgot about Tyler McGill. And he's starting the second game of the season for them. At times, he's looked like an ace. He throws 7 different pitches, a really wide arsenal. When multiple of those pitches are working, he could be extremely effective. He also modified his mix last year. He added a splitter. He added a sinker to his mix as well. I thought the splitter was phenomenal. So Tyler McGill, if they can optimize his arsenal, and that's what the Mets are really good at now, is pitching development, putting guys in the pitching lab and getting the most out of them, I think you're going to see continued development from Tyler McGill, who still has substantial upside as a starting pitcher. And, even last year, like I said, his strikeout minus walk rate was above what Hunter Brown posted. So, Mets, again, plus 108. Well, I made them plus 108. Plus 115 or better. You're probably not going to get that unless the market goes back up. But the under 8, I would grab the moment you hear this because that is likely to come out of Ridge.
Now, the Cubs and Snakes played a beer league softball game, 16 runs out in the desert on opening day. Where are you targeting in terms of the total, maybe a market overreaction, with the recency bias of what just happened?
Yeah, really strong under umpire in this matchup pushed me to the under on the game. I made the total around 8. Without Phil Cuzzy in there, I would be closer to 8.5, and I would have passed on this game. because he is an extreme pitchers umpire, he's worth about a 6% adjustment to my projected total. He's the second most profitable under umpire in Action Labs, career 55.6% to the under, 7% ROI for under bettors. But he is a guy, by strikeout minus walk rates and other adjustments that you can actually confirm is a pitching positive umpire. And he should help these pitchers in particular, because Jameson Taillon and Merrill Kelly both pound the zone. And these are guys who are going to rely on getting additional called strikes in the shadow zone in order to help them get through innings. Taillon has one of the highest called strike rates among starting pitchers. I believe he ranked 18th overall amongst all pitchers last season. Merrill Kelly, not quite as high, but still above average in terms of his called strike rate. And he's a guy who's a strike thrower who's, just pounding the zone and trying to get ahead in the count and then trying to generate weak contact after that. Now, I'm not particularly high on either of these guys. Merrill Kelly posted a 4.9 expected ERA last season. Taillon posted a 4.7 expected ERA 2 years ago. And I also expect the roof is going to be open again in Arizona tonight, which boosts the run scoring environment there too. It was partial, influence on the run scoring environment yesterday. But with the pitcher friendly umpire in there, as I said, I pushed my total closer to 8. I would bet under 8.5 down to minus 108 on this matchup. There's been a lot of money on the over. It hasn't moved off of 8.5 at plus money. I figured it might get to 9 last night after all those runs, as you mentioned, Mike. I thought that might be the market overreaction. Was it moving off of 8.5, going to the key number of 9? It never actually got there. It seems like, if anything, the juice on the under 8.5 is moving from plus money to minus 102, and it seems like it's starting to creep up to where it's not going to move off of 8.5 for sure. So 8.5, as I said, again, down to minus 108 in this matchup.
Yamamoto is making his first start of the season on the mainland in Game 2 against the Tigers. We talked in the preseason about the concept of having to back some teams that are really bad and also picking your spots to fade the Dodgers, who are prohibitive favorites. It seems like every time they, hit the diamond. Is this a spot to play the Tigers? And if so, are you pairing it up with anything with the total?
Yeah, this is going to kind of be a daily decision you're going to have to make. I would imagine most days I'm going to show value betting against the Dodgers. The market will probably be overinflated in their direction. At open last night, this was not a bet. I was in line with the betting market last night. Woke up this morning. The Tigers are now plus 195 instead of plus 175. I think I'll try to wait for plus 200 if I can. I would bet them at plus 185 or better. Realistically, I made this like plus 170. But this is a good example and a good lesson for, you're always going to find the market move towards the Dodgers on a daily basis. Like at open, you may show an edge on their opponent. I would say 99% of the time, just wait and you'll get a better number the day of the game, as opposed to betting against the Dodgers overnight. If you want to bet on the Dodgers, bet on them overnight. That's probably where you'll find the best line. Now, the Tigers should have won last night. They went 0 for 15 with runners in scoring position. The Dodgers, though, this bullpen is super locked down. That's the biggest difference between the Dodgers last year and the Dodgers this year. Is even in the playoffs, you saw it, they can get through the final 4 innings with their relievers and basically give up no runs. And I really trust their back end guys now, where last year they were closer to a league average bullpen. This year they're the number 1 or number 2 bullpen, in baseball. So Yamamoto also is just starting to look like that dominant guy that we expected when he signed that $300 million contract. He doesn't give up any hard contact. He has above average strikeout and walk rates. He doesn't walk very many guys. The best way to get to him is to ambush him early. And now he's a guy with a below average home run rate, or I should say, like, for him, above average home run rate, but he's going to suppress home runs, is what I'm saying. So it's really hard, to get anything off of Yamamoto. I lean to the over. There's a very good over umpire in this game. John Tumpane is one of the best in terms of run boost for hitters. If you look at other sites, strikeout minus walk stuff, he's more neutral. But the Tigers do fit multiple bet lab systems here. I don't know if I actually talked about it like specifically with the Mets game. So first series, it's in labs, it's called first series. It's an Action Pro system. Games number 2 and 3 of the regular season. Road dogs since 2005. Games 2 and 3 of the regular season. 50.4% straight up. 18.6% ROI. Dominant. Like absolutely dominant. We talked yesterday about the favorites on opening day, teams coming off of a playoff appearance who are favorites on opening day, dominant, while the road underdogs on games 2 and 3 of the series are equally dominant, if not more dominant. I don't know why. Yesterday I could point to number one starter, rested bullpen, number one catcher. Like, what's different? What advantage does the road team have that the home team didn't have in games 2 and 3? They didn't throw their closer on opening day, so they're available in games 2 and 3. I can't point to like any reasons to hypothesize why this has taken place. But that said, the Mets, the A's, the Tigers, they all fit 3 or 4 different Action Lab systems here today that, first series one with games 2 and 3, but then also contrarian systems, road underdogs, etc. So the Tigers are a bet that certainly provides value. If you can get plus 185 or better, it's worth betting. I'm just going to try to time the market and wait for 2-1 or better there. And if you can get a minus 120 on an over 7, I consider it as well, because I made this total around 7.6. But just an example of, a bet every single day. If you want to bet against the Dodgers, wait. If you want to bet on the Dodgers, bet it early.
Ideal start to the season for the Marlins. They get a win over Paul Skeens. He ends up getting pulled in the 6th inning when he hit the mid-90s in terms of his pitch count. They scattered 3 hits against him, but they were able to score 2 runs, and then they walk it off in the 9th. They're a dog here in game 2 at home, but you like the fish to keep it going.
Yeah, if I can get plus 125 or plus 185 respectively on the Marlins and on the Rockies against the Rays, I'm interested in betting both of those underdogs. Just numbers plays. Not going to sit here and try to sell you, a load of BS on either having significant advantages anywhere. Though I think the Pirates in general, people were high on coming into the year as a chance to do something. Now without Jared Jones for an extended stretch, I don't think Jared Jones is coming back. I think they're going to try to bring him back. I think they're just being hopeful more so than anything. I think there was a joke like, how on commercials you see 9 out of 10 doctors approve this thing. Well, the 10th doctor was the guy that they found to approve Jared Jones' arm to go to rehab instead of get Tommy John. I mean, it's looking very negative in terms of the outlook for his injury. They do have Bubba Chandler sitting in the minor leagues. They bring him up. They're basically in the same spot they were last year. But the Marlins and Rockies we talked about a lot in the preseason as alternative win total loss leaders as compared to the White Sox. The White Sox pitching looked pretty good yesterday. I think either of these games could absolutely finish with the most losses in the bigs. The only other thing I want to mention just in regard to the Rockies game, the Rockies and Rays, we talked a lot about Steinbrenner Field in the preseason, betting overs there this year. We don't have an umpire yet for today's matchup. I have umpires for all the other matchups because once we get an umpire for any of these series, we know who's going to finish out the series based on the umpire rotation. We don't typically get the umpires, though, till 4 or 5 hours at best, usually 3 hours before first pitch. So we'll know an umpire a bit later in the day. Doubt it's going to influence my projection enough to place a bet on this game because we have very strong winds blowing in from right field at Steinbrenner Field. As I said, it's the Yankee Stadium dimensions, but with different wind patterns and different weather. It's very warm today. It's going to be in the mid-80s. Very warm. Would have loved to have bet an over, except for the fact that we have like 10 to 15 mile an hour winds blowing in from that very short porch in right field. So the advantage that you get hitting home runs into that short porch going to be directly counteracted today. We're probably going to bet some Brandon Lowe home run props during the season, targeting left-handed hitters against right-handed pitchers in general at that park. But it looks like it's going to be a pass in terms of opening day in Tampa Bay this year.
That'll do it for today's episode of Payoff Pitch. Thanks for tuning in. If you'd like to tail some of these bets from today's episode, look for the quick slip link in the episode description. And don't forget to download the free award-winning Action Network app and leave us a 5-star rating and review wherever you listen to the podcast. Also, check out the Action Network Discord. There's a link in today's description as well that you can go over and start to interact with some of our experts and other bettors in the space. We'll see you here on Monday. As I mentioned, we're going to be back on Monday, Tuesday, Fridays, every single week giving out best bets. We're going to have a rotating cast of characters here to give out some player props, some one-off angles throughout the week. So be sure to check us out then. For Sean Zerillo, I'm Mike Calabrese. Thanks so much for listening to Payoff Pitch, Action Network's Major League Baseball betting podcast, and good luck with all your bets today on Friday.